What up? Give me half a second to get to this page. There we go. Okay, bam. So this is gonna be a fun one. Or at least it depends on what the weather looks like where you're at. I can't say it's gonna be super fun, but it should be interesting to say the least. Uh, I want to take like an entire week to do this chapter. We could probably push it out today, the entire book of the astronomy. Realistically, it's only 13 pages. I could probably read all of those to you in like an hour and a half. I could probably read them to you in like 20 minutes if I didn't stop and take any breaks. But you know, it would be fruitless to do that. There's a reason why I stop every 20 seconds or whenever I know that there's something that I saw when I read it, or there's something different as I'm reading it now that I may be picking up on. Uh, it's important to share that information with you and to not withhold that from you. Um, I will let you know. I'm in the book of the dreams. That starts on page 71. That starts on chapter 83. I'm I'm already I'm at like 1 second. So from after this part, I've read all of this. You know, after the book of the dreams, I've read everything. But where I'm at right now is that it's a lot going on. I want to take some time to really invest. I've been invested in it for over a week and a half now, going on 2 weeks. I'm pretty stumped. Um, I I got the first part to kind of come together now, but now the rest of it has to fall together. The more it comes together, the more I'll be throwing it out there. It's about creation, to say the least. So here we go right now. I'm going to pick up in the book of Enoch, and we're on chapter 72, book 3, Astronomy. And this is, as it says right here, an introduction of the luminaries. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each, according to their classes, their dominion, and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel, who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. Stop number one. When it comes down to everything, Uriel is the holy angel who is the angel that is with the people, or not the people, but the luminaries, that is their guide. So let's go ahead and break it all down. And he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity. Excuse me. Till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. Stop right there. Now I've been waiting for a long time to get to that part. Um, there's going to be another Earth, or a. You ever heard these guys say that there's volcanoes in the ocean that erupt, that are creating landmass under the water all the time, and they say that the Earth is sinking? Well, if certain parts of the Earth were to sink and certain parts of the so-called landmass of the water were to come up, it's a new creation. It's something new. But anyway, let's just keep it pushing. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. So let's just stop right there. Thousands of years ago, it was distinguished and made clear to human beings that the land of the rising sun is the east and it sets in the west. This is made clear thousands of years ago. So it's not that they're so smart that they figured it out, it's that it was laid out unto them in clear layman vernacular. And this was a common knowledge that would have been passed on by the people who survived the flood. Carrying on. And I saw six portals in which the sun rises, in which the sun rises, and six portals in which the sun sets. And the moon rises and sets in these portals. And the leaders of the stars and those whom they lead, six in the east and six in the west, all following each other in accurately corresponding order. Also, many windows to the right and left of these portals. And first there goes for the great luminary, named the sun. Here we go. And his circumference. What? And his, giving him a masculine presence, is like the circumference of the heaven. And he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. Now, my understanding, the reason why the sun is a male figure is that it gives off heat, it puts out. Men put out energy. They don't take it in. They're not supposed to receive it. You understand? And we'll get forth until when the moon receives certain parts of the sun's light, giving it a feminine aspect. But this is just something that you have to understand, and not get all carried away in it, but just understanding masculine and feminine energy. Okay, carry on and going forward. And his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven. This is the sun. And he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east. And so is guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. In this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth. And in that fourth portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which a flame, from which proceed a flame when they are opened in their season. Stop right there. So this is explaining that in this one portal, okay, in this one entrance, it has 12. You understand? And what it's saying is that this is just where it's going to, as far as uh, the fourth portal, which is considered the great portal. The great portal. As you read it, I don't remember if it really elaborates why it's the great portal, but it's considered the great one. With that said, it's the first portal that it comes through. So the first month or the first whatever of the year is a story I'm looking for. The first actual real month of the year is not is not really cold. You understand? And we'll read why in a moment. Not freezing cold. Not the January is not the typical first month. It can't be. The reason why is because it is what you're about to hear. Because January in certain places is the days are short and the nights are long. And it says here In this way, he rises in the first he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth. And the fourth portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which proceed a flame when they are open in their season. Okay, so it's telling us that there's heat in this first month. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that portal for 30 mornings in succession and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer and the night nightly shorter than the 30th morning. And on that day, the day is longer than the night by a ninth part. And the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun rises from the fourth portal and sets in the fourth portal and returns to the fifth portal of the east 30 mornings. Stop right there. Hello, sister. If it's been your birthday, happy belated. You know, wanted to say that to you, and hope everything was fun. You know, and uneventful, but still fun. Uh, right now, we're just covering the very first part of the luminaries. So, since I really kind of just started in it, I'll give you a quick rundown. So, it's broken down how there are 6 portals on the east. Oh, not yet? Okay, don't worry about it. When is it exactly? When is your birthday exactly? Since I'm on the subject. And anyhow, so the sun and the moon are the great luminaries, but the sun is the first luminary. Okay, June 3, got you. Um, the sun is the great luminary, and what else? The circumference of the sun. So listen to this. It's like the circumference of the heaven. Now, I didn't really jump off all the way into that, but since I'm there again. The heaven has a circumference. Now, when you're reading about the earth, I think there may be one time. I haven't really read about the earth having a circumference in this book, but it gives us the idea that the heavens are circular or is a spherical type atmosphere. Uh, uh, and the circumference because we equate that to a circle. Now, now that could also just be the overall circumference that the object takes up, you know. Um, but the sun does look roundish. The moon looks round. So if that's saying that those objects are round, and it's saying that the firmament or the heavens has a circumference, then it itself is also round. But the earth, when you read about the earth, is not given this distinction. Just another thing to throw out there. Um, but the sun, as I was speaking the other day, uh, 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 he's driven by the wind. And it says here that he comes out of the east, right, and returns through the north in order to reach the east, right? Okay, so listen, it says like this. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east. And is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. Stop right there. Now, what I'm trying to say is this right here is that wherever the sun is moving around at, right, the wind is his mechanism for moving, you know. So the argument, just a little FYI, before we go into how long or how short the days are, I want you to think about how windy certain days are and certain times of the year that have certain length of a day or not length of a day. Like I want you to think about like January is windy, is rainy, is all that stuff. Uh, April can be windy and rainy if it likes to. March can be windy and rainy, but there's months that seem shorter in the day, if I will, and seem longer at night. And there are mechanisms that power this. And what I'm saying is that the sun, when it rises for these days that it comes through the fourth portal, for 12, these 12 windows that it's, I mean, and who knows the exact order of the windows that it comes through, or if it repeats through certain windows or what. But it says that there are 12 window openings from which proceed a flame when they are open in their season. So it is just a further understanding that in this first month, the true first month, not the first month that we've been led to believe is the first month of the year, but the true first month uh, is a warm month, is a month that is not a winteresque month. And the reason why we could even presume this to be true is that because the creation was completed during a time when warmth would have been acclimated to the planet in its fullness, producing not only an environment that animals and human beings could live in, but that sustained the ecology, i.e., the produce, more greater because that's the agriculture. Um, but it sustains all these things and it keeps everyone alive. So, with that said, this is at a time of year when it's obviously warmer, and this would be the first month, you know. So now you have to really see it like the first month in the year uh, could arguably be during the month of new corn, which is April, uh, which is you could argue why the Most High had the Passover during that time. I'm just throwing that out there. I could be very wrong, but it's just something that you have to consider as far as the overall story of the people, because all of these things do play a part in why in which the Most High acts when He acts and does what He does when He doesn't. Um, all these things are greatly important. With that said, it says that the sun comes out of the fourth portal for 30 days, and it says 30 mornings, excuse me, and sets accurately in the fourth portal of the west of the heaven. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer, and the night nightly shorter than the 30th morning. And on that day, so this is the first morning of the new month, the night is longer by a ninth part, and the day exact amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the nine to 8 parts. Now stop right there. So that meant before this new month kicked in, the sun was actually 11 parts, and the night was 7 parts. Now I'm going to keep reading. And the sun rises from the fourth portal and sets in the fourth, and returns to the fifth portal of the east 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. And the day becomes longer by 2 parts. All right, here we go, and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts, and returns to the east. Now stop right there. You and I both know that January and February don't have longer days of the year in the year than months, let's say like even July or August, which is what I'm contending are the first months of the year, more or less. Full blown summer coming into the fall would be inappropriate time setting to actually say um, um, life began effectively on Earth, and not just for everyone. That's just for any. That's just that's just that's just me putting it in a real basic sense, so that way I don't get lost in all the other things I want to say. So I overstepped myself by saying that the last month was 11 parts in, or the day was 11 parts and the night was 7. But I know what I was meant to say is that it's coming to be 11 parts and then 7 parts. So your first 2 months are already longer just in normal conjunction. And then when we read it, you'll see why I'm saying that. You'll be like, oh man, yeah, uh this can't be January and February. And you can pay attention next year, and you can get your clock out and all that stuff, but the sun comes up late and it goes down early in those months. So those can't be the first 2 months of the year. And just listen to this part. Or as we go forth, just listen to how I'll have to come back to this probably 3 or 4 or 5 times when it explains what months give up the which months have heat and produce the settings for a person to reap a harvest. Here we go. And we're just going to go back to the fifth portal. And the sun rises from that fourth portal and sets in the fourth portal and returns to the fifth portal when it's at the end of that 30-day period, that 30 morning period, I should say, and returns to the fifth portal, the east, 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. And then the day becomes 2 parts longer by 2 parts, and amounts to 11 parts. And the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. And it returns to the east and enters the sixth portal and rises and sets in the sixth portal 1 and 30 mornings, so 31 mornings, on account of its sign. Now, the sign of this portal means more than likely it's one of the portals that has an intercalary day, which is a day that separates the seasons. But we'll get into that later. These guys, anyway. And the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to 11 parts. And the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. And it returns to the east and enters into the sixth portal and rises and sets in the sixth portal 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign. And that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day doubles the night, and the day becomes 12 parts. What up, bro? And the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. Now, listen, this is the first 3 months. The first month starts with it's 10 parts of the day, 8 parts of the night. Second month is 11 parts of the day, 7 parts of the night. The third month is 12 parts a day, 6 parts a night. Listen, y'all, what months go in that succession where the day seems a little bit longer than the night, and then it's clear that there's way more day than night? The summer and the fall, right? But we're gonna keep it pushing. The spring begins it, but the spring, you could argue, doesn't really start till like May. Sometimes, I mean, this year it seemed like spring is even now. We're gonna push past June 20th. It seems like it won't be summer till like July. How the whole weather system is going out here. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's just me elaborating and just paying attention. And I said that to say this: the first 3 months are longer than the nights considerably, and the third month has twice as much day as there is a night. So unless January, February, March, you really believe that those 3 months have, because I'm about to keep reading to you how it works out. And as we get further into the months, you're going to be like, that doesn't make sense. But here we go. Unless, obviously the months we've been told are in the wrong order. Here we go. What does it say? Okay, on that day, the days become longer than night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened, it becomes 6 parts, and the sun amounts up to the day shorter, and the sun mounts up to make the day shorter, and the night longer, and the sun returns to the east and enters into the sixth portal. Now stop right there. Now it says the sun mounts up. So the reason why the sun is doing all this showboating, it seems as if, is so that way it can actually effectively make the days shorter. Okay. So this is why I'm telling y'all that the first 3 months, to me, only to me, seem as if they were born from the time that you would consider late summer, early fall, coming into the fall, into the winter. Listen to what happens. We're in verse 17 or verse 16. And when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases exactly by 1 part and becomes 11 part. And the sun goes forth from the sixth portal in the west and goes to the east and rises in the fifth portal for 30 mornings and sets in the west again in the fifth portal and, and, and sets again in the west and sets again in the fifth western portal. There we go. On that day, the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and tonight 8 parts. And the sun goes forth from the fifth portal and sets in the fifth portal of the west, stop, and rises in the fourth portal for 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign. So this is another one of those intercalary days. But I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to go back and I'm just going to read the months to you real quick. So we've had 1 month that ended on 10 parts day, 8 parts night. Then the second month was was the day was 11 parts and the night was 7 parts. The third month, the days are 12 parts and the nights are 6 parts. The fourth month, the days are 11 parts, the nights are 7 parts. The fifth month, okay, uh, the days are in the fifth month, which we're about to read. Listen to this right here, verse 19. Well, I'll start at verse 18 again. 30 mornings. No, I'll start at verse 17. And I'll read from the middle. And the sun goes forth from the sixth portal in the west, and this is only the fifth month, and goes to the east, and rises in the fifth portal for 30 mornings, and sets in the west again, in the fifth western portal. On that day, day decreases by 2 parts, and this is only the fifth month, and amounts to 10 parts, and tonight 8 parts. And the sun goes forth from the fourth portal, so 6 month now, and sets in the fifth portal, and rises in the fourth portal for 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign, and sets in the west. On that day, the day is equalized with the night, and the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. Now, 6 months in, you have equal, about half, about 50-50. Now, if I started my year, just hear me, in the middle of the year, let's say I wanted to start in June or July, and the day was 50-50, I could see somebody telling me that January, February is 50-50. I could believe that. That's a believable time frame as far as how much day and how much night you get. It's about equal. But for a person to try to tell you that if you start the month in January and 6 months in, the days become half and equal in June, that's a lie. That's clearly that's not how we live in our life. That's not how it goes. So it's like right there is telling you that the first months that were established, truly established, are not the months that we live them now. And that somebody totally changed everything. And this is why this is going to take a lot longer than going through the other part of the book, because I'll probably have to go back and read a whole lot of this again. And if not reading it, just elaborating, you know, the fact that there's windows at each different portal, at each different station. Anyway, let me not get carried away. Keep reading. So this is verse 20. Yeah, verse 20. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west and returns to the east and rises 30 mornings in the third portal and sets in the west in the third portal. On that day, night becomes longer than day. So 7 months in, so in the month, so right here, exactly, sister. But it says right here, this is crazy. So 7 months in, this would be proverbially July, right? And it's saying in July, it's saying in July technically, which we know isn't true. On that day, nights become longer than the day, and the night becomes longer than night, and the day shorter than day, till the 30th morning. And the night amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that third portal, and sets in the third portal in the west, and returns to the east for 30 mornings, and rises in the second portal. So here we go with month number 8. And in like manner sets in the second portal in the west of heaven. On that day, night amounts to 11 parts. So we're 8 months in, and the nights are clearly longer than the day. Does that sound right to anybody? No, it doesn't. It sounds wrong. It sounds real wrong. And on that day, night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on that day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal and returns to the east in the first portal for 1 and 30 days. This is another intercalary day. Okay. And this is the ninth month, and sets in the first portal in the west of the heaven. And on that day, night becomes longer and amounts to double of the day. And the night amounts to exactly 12 parts, and to the day 6. And the sun has traversed the divisions of his orbit and turns again on those divisions of his orbit and enters that portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite to it. Now, stop right there. What it's saying is that the sun has made his rounds through the first portals, through the first. So it takes the sun. Second. So it takes the sun 9 months to do his rounds. Okay, and then he's done. So, and now I'm gonna tell you why this is important, because there's 4 intercalary days. There's 4 days where the actual seasons are separated. The reason why this is so important is because it's telling us that in the first, uh, 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 how many days would that be? 270 days. In the first 270 days, roughly, or something like that, 271, the sun does his actual orbit. Now he comes back to get ready to do everything all over again. Now, this is how it goes. And the sun has traversed the divisions of his orbit and turns again on those divisions of his orbit and enters that portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite to it. Now, when it says enters that portal, it's the first portal. Now, the portal that's opposite to it, not sure. On that night, the night has decreased in length by a ninth part, and the night becomes 11 parts, and the day 7 parts. This is the 10th month. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal of the east, and returns on those his divisions of his orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. On that day, the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8. And on that day, the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west and returns to the east and rises in the third portal. This is the 11th one for 30 and 1 mornings. This is another rending or cutting off of the intercalary days. Going forth, on that day, the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. The night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as it is today's 364. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and the night arise through the course of the suns. These distinctions are made. So it comes that its course becomes daily longer and its course nightly shorter. And this is the law in the course of the sun. And his return as often as he returns 60 times and rises, the great luminary, which is named the sun, forever and ever. And thus, excuse me, and that which rises is the great luminary, and so is named according to its appearance, according as the Lord commanded. As he rises, so he sets and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night. His light, listen, 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 listen. This is so important. His light is sevenfold brighter than that of the moon, but as regards size, they are both equal. So the sun is not so many times bigger than the damn moon that you could fit 25,000 moons or a million moons into the sun. It's just 7 times brighter. Its brightness gives it the stature and size. It increases how big it looks. But the actual fact is, the only way you can have an eclipse is if both discs, both shapes are the same size. If you believe that the sun and the moon are perfectly aligned, so great that every single eclipse that there wasn't uh, a part of the sun that totally was missed by the moon. Like, I mean, it's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe something like that. It's way easier to believe that they're both the same size. That's way easier to believe. That sounds way more logical, way more sensible. And once again, this is information that is irrefutable because it comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So even if people wanted to say, oh, well, that's outdated and this, or this, that, and the other, some of the information that they use in their everyday life comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, comes exactly from this book. And this is how they came to understand what the stones and what the like, for example, I want to ask y'all something. How would you know what gold was if somebody didn't tell you that that's gold and that the other one is silver? You don't know. Somebody has to tell you, man. So it works no different. And for people to think that these civilizations have gotten this far and all of a sudden they're stymied by their growth and technological advances, which is nothing more than witchcraft and sorcery, then you know what I mean. I I just don't know what to tell them. I think they're lost. But that is the first part of of the uh, of the astrology. That's not the main introduction. I got a little more to go, but um, got to really stress these portals. Got to really stress the fact that if you read how it goes, the first month starts ahead by a whole part than the night does. It starts with 10 parts and 8, and then the year ends on it being equal. So if I were to say that the month of June has closer, even May. we could say, has closer to 50-50 days, right? Hell, you could even say April has closer to 50-50 days if you wanted to. Once again, there's so many months, but March, I'm hard up on that. The night might come early in March. It might not start acting right until the middle of April. Like it, all of this depends where you live. But even still, where you live it doesn't deviate from a certain course. But mind the fact, these things were established when Earth was Pangea. And that is a greater thing that I have to talk about is that the Earth was still one supercontinent when all this was taking place, when all this information was coming forth and being understood. If that is appreciated, then maybe the other parts of the things that I'm trying to explain will be, easier understood. That the Earth is still one giant chunk of mass. It's not the broke up pieces that we live on now. So it would have been even easier to observe these signs than it is now, because you're at a part in the world where the Earth, that landmass was not there originally. So the way you see the same sign is going to be different than a person who's closer to the designate location of how Earth was initially located. This is why the people in Africa were able to construct so-called Zulu time. I'm pretty sure real Zulu time is based on the parts of the day. I'm quite sure it is. They didn't construct it out of nothing. But if you take the 18 parts and let's say you divide them ever more to where we're paying attention to the slightest shifts in the sun, because if you watch it, then you'll pay attention. You can actually see the sun move throughout the day. But you're not supposed to do stuff like that. That's a form of stargazing. The sun is considered a star. But we'll read that in a little bit. We'll read on to that later. Chapter 73. And after this, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. Now we know why it's called smaller is because it's not as bright. And her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, indication that they both are the same size. And her chariot, which she rides, is driven by the wind, all just like the sun. And light is given to her in definite measure, or in measure, meaning that she is not like the sun, where the sun just is this explosive ball of light and heat. She is tempered to have so much light uh, uh, um, for a specific time of the year, for a specific season. Here we go. And her rising and setting change every month. And her days are like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniform, meaning it's full, it amounts to the seventh part of the light of the sun. So that's where they get that she is, or that the sun is 7 times brighter than the moon, or that the moon is 7 times less bright than the sun. He'll explain why this is important a little bit. And her days are like the days of the sun, when her light is uniform. It amounts to the seventh parts of the light of the sun. And thus she rises. And her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning. On that day she becomes visible and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and her whole circumference is empty, without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it, the 14th part of her light. And when she receives 1/7 part of half of her light amounts to 1/7 part and half thereof. And she sets with the sun, and the sun rises, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives one half of the part of the light. Now stop right there. This is where they get the whole nonsense that the sun powers the moon, but the sun does not power the moon. Do you understand that? It's because her light is definite, given to her in measure, as it was just said, that there's reasons. If I read to you later on, maybe I can find the scripture where I want to say it's in the Apocrypha, but it pretty much states that like the warriors that are in heaven, you know, the Most High's angels who are in heaven use the moon as the sign, and and they act accordingly to that sign, So the moon having certain light certain days and not having light certain days is really a testament to what they're doing up above. It has less to do with what we believe it has to do with. But I'm gonna go ahead and go forth from that. Uh, and I am on the fourth verse. Her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning, and on that day she becomes visible and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and her whole circumference is empty, without light, with the exception of one seventh part of it. So if you just heard what I just said, is that it says, and the one half goes forth, boom, by a seventh part, and her whole circumference is empty. So what it means is that one whole half went forth, and then the other part went forth, but one seventh of a part stayed by. And that one seventh is constituted, as it says, because she'll receive one seventh part of half of her light. Her light amounts to one seventh part and half thereof. So she's going to get light from the sun, but she also retains her own light. So she's not completely powered by the sun, which is why I'm so against that notion. It's BS. Anyway, let's go ahead and keep it pushing. I've also just been against the notion because you can see the moon in the light where the sun is on one side, the moon is on the other. In order to see the moon, if it was completely powered by the sun, that means that the sun would have to be behind the moon. But that's neither here nor there. They make me mad. Here we go. Verse 7. And she sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with him, and receives half of one part of light. And in that night, in the beginning of her morning, in the beginning of her morning, in the commencement of the lunar day, the moon sets within the sun, and is invisible that night within the 14 parts, and the half of one of them. And she rises on that day with exactly a seventh part, and comes forth, and recedes from the rising of the sun in her remaining days. She becomes bright in the 13th parts. Stop right there. So it's saying that she has one seventh, okay, at one point. No, now it's saying that she has almost no support from the sun because she's with the sun. So when she gets up at certain nights, right, you can only see a certain little sliver of the moon, a certain little part of the moon, an actual part of it, which is these are things that we see all the time. Now it's saying that on this what day is that again? Okay, so it'd be on the 30th day. She would do all these things would take place, and this would be the 30th day of the month. Now you have to realize I have to read two more chapters about the moon. Um, really, just one more, but I have to read the start of 75, and then I can let this go kind of safely. Uh, there's a lot going on in this next part. Took me probably 2 weeks to really understand what it was really saying. I'm going to read it real slow. I'm going to come back to this next part again. And because that's the end of it. Verse 8, that last part I just read to you, where it says, and she rises on that day with exactly a seventh part and comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun. And in her remaining days, she becomes bright in the 13 parts. So what it's saying is that it went from being 1/7 to 13 out of 14 parts. So whatever the addition of light is, right, it's only missing 1/14. She's only missing half of 1/7 of her light. And we've all seen the moon like that as well. And the reason why I have to bring this forth is because the moon is on its own program. She doesn't she when it says that the moon has a different course every month, it means that. The reason why this is important is because the moon is the reason why people, this is going to sound messed up, but the moon is the reason why people are actually off in their days. It's the moon's fault, and I'm going to explain to you why. Chapter 74. And I saw another course and law for her, how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution. And all these, Uriel, the holy angel, who is the leader of them all, showed to me and their positions. And I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their lights, till 15 days were accomplished. In single seventh parts, she accomplishes all her light in the east, and in single seventh parts accomplishes all her darkness in the west. And in certain months, she alters her settings. What? And in certain months, she alters her settings. And in certain months, she pursues her own peculiar course. Stop right there. I was just explaining that to you. The moon rises with the sun, okay? And will set with the sun, or will try to set with the sun. But she's on her own program. And I just read it to you. So you can see the moon because she wants you to see her. That's why. Because she's like, I'm doing me. You know what I mean? If you can't see her, she doesn't want you to see her. There's a reason for that. But I'm reading it to you right now. The moon is on her own program. Listen, it says just like this. And in certain months, she, being the moon, alters her settings. So she just changes her settings out of nowhere. Like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do something else, right? I'm gonna speed it up or slow it down, right? Which is why when you say why you can see the moon, it does whatever. And then hold on, what else does she do? And in certain months, she pursues her own peculiar course. Wow. In certain months, she pursues her own peculiar course. Just does whatever she wants to do. I love it. It's classic. It's classic. Anyway, anyway, it's one of those things where if you read it and you appreciate human nature and you apply your understanding of feminine, and once again, now it's out of human nature, feminine and masculine energy, because that applies to all things. Now you can understand why that's such a funny thing. You know, how the sun is a lot more rigid in his ways. The moon is like, nah, whatever. I'm just gonna do me. And the Most High is okay with this. It's that's the ever greater part is that the Most High doesn't stop the moon from doing what she does. Nor does he force the sun to do something different. But I'm gonna keep it pushing. Verse 5. In 2 months, the moon sets with the sun in those two middle portals, the third and the fourth. She goes forth for 7 days and turns about and returns again through the portal where the sun rises, and accomplishes all her light, and recedes from the sun, and in 8 days enters the sixth portal from which the sun goes forth. Listen, it's about to get real deep, y'all. In about 5, 6 sentences, it's about to go down, and you're gonna have to really listen deep. And when the sun goes forth from the fourth portal, she goes forth 7 days. Now, if you guys just didn't hear what she just did, the sun went forth from one of the middle portals, and in 7 days she went and doubled back to wherever the sun was at. So once again, that's one of those ways how the moon can just change her course. She doesn't have to. To us, we're just seeing rising and settings, but they're landing in portals. They're landing in stations that are controlled by angels. Stuff is so deep. It's so epic. Anyway, let me go ahead and keep it pushing. And when the sun goes forth, this is verse 7. And when the sun goes forth from the fourth portal, she goes forth 7 days until she goes forth from the fifth and turns back again in 7 days into the fourth portal and accomplishes all her life and recedes and enters into the first portal in 8 days. And she returns again in 7 days into the fourth portal from which the sun goes forth. Thus I saw their position, how the moons rose and the sun set in those days. Now, when it says the moons, it's being the different light of the moons, okay? And there's different names to the sun and the moon, but we'll get to that later. And if 5 years added together, the sun has an overplus of 30 days. And all the days which accrue to it, one of those 5 years, when they are full, amount to 364 days. And the overplus of the sun and the stars amounts to 6 days. In 5 years, 6 days comes to 30 days. And the moon falls behind the sun and the stars the number of 30 days. Stop right there. This is why it's so deep. Not only do the intercalary days tear them up, which I'm going to read about in a little bit, but this is why people get messed up. Because the moon doesn't follow the actual course of the sun, like the sun is on its own course. The moon does whatever she wants to do. So every year, right, when the sun accomplishes 364 days, the moon actually only accomplished 358. Right, because she deviates and does whatever. She does her own thing. With that said, though, people are behind 6 days if you're watching the moon. Listen, if you're watching only the moon, you're behind 6 days every year. Thank you very much. Right. That alone throws off your count for how long the year has been. They can't distinguish it. They can't tell me nothing else. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep reading. And the stars, and the sun and the stars bring in the years exactly, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day until eternity, but complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. In 3 years, there are 1,092 days. And in 5 years, 1,820 days. So that in 8 years, there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone, the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days. And in 5 years, she falls 50 days behind, which is the sum of 1,770. There is 5 to be added for 1,062 days. And in 5 years, there are 1,770 days, so that the moon, the 6 days, so that for the moon, the days 6 and 8 years amount to 6 days. The 6 days will amount to in 8 years 21,832 days. Now listen to what I'm saying to you. If you listen, just follow me. I want y'all to really get what I'm trying to say right now. Take 8 years out of your life, just 8 of them. You could pick any 8 of the years, because I'm assuming everybody is at least 8 years old listening to me. If you pick 8 years, that means that the moon has fallen behind. Listen, a total of 21,000, or its count is only 21,832 days. But we already know that for 8 years, you know what I'm saying? It it's off so much that you have in five. Listen, in 5 years, right on. It's off by a total of 100. Excuse me, 50 days. There we go. It's off by 50 days. So in 10 years, it'll be off by 100 days. So if this is almost a whole year off, there we go. That's what I'm trying to get at. If this is almost a year off, and really more than almost a year off, really it's probably closer to a whole half a year off. For every 8 years, you're 6 months behind your count of what the real days are. But that's monumental. You're talking about you're years behind now, like, or years ahead, depending on how you look at it. The proof to this, you guys can go look at this. It's called the. I've done this before. You guys have seen me do this before. The Moroccan Treaty or the Barbaran Treaty, right? Whatever it's called, but it's the Treaty of Morocco. What happens is this: if you look at the Muslims' time frame, and this is done in like the year 1700 or something like that. The Muslims are saying it was the year 1400 back then, okay, in the year 1700. And the white people were saying it was the year 1700. So this is why I'm saying what I'm saying is that if you for thousands of years have been following the moon, okay, or for over 1,000 years you followed the moon, do you know how many freaking years you're behind technically? Because if these guys add days to the year, add leap year, add all this other freaking crazy stuff, and these are things that they've implemented just recently, but to add days to the month are things that they've done in the ancient past, as far back as two of the Antiochuses. I want to say Antiochus Eupator and Antiochus Epiphanes both had days of the month added, and a couple of these Roman dudes had days of the month added to the you know what I'm saying, to the actual system. See, this is the type of stuff that it doesn't come full circle until we read these types of things. Now, here we go. I'm gonna read this one more time. In 5 years, this is for the moon, are 1,770 days. Now listen, in 5 years for the sun and all the other stars is 1,820. So it's 50 days back. So that for the moon, the days are in 6 days, 8 years amounts to, so that for the moon's days, 6 and 8 years amounts to 21,832 days. But the problem is that for every year you're losing six. So it's it's saying that you're only 48 years back, but that's not right because you're, what is it, 60 years back for every 30 days. But if you're going according, this is the problem. If you're going according to the moon in the moon phase, you have to accomplish the moon phase. So you're not just those days behind. You're every day plus all the days behind that the sun accomplishes. So this is just, how am I trying to say it? It's like it's like starting a race at the same time, right? Like the tortoise and the hare. This would be the best way I could put it. And we all seen the story how the hare goes to sleep on the tortoise because he's hella slow. I'll just wake up and beat him. So the moon changes her own course. Technically, if the moon wanted to, it could pursue perfection with the sun and everything else. all at like all times, but she doesn't for whatever reason. We're about to read about the intercalary days here in about, I don't know, 2 minutes. What's up, Martin? How you doing, bro? When we read about it, we have to keep in mind that the moon is off. Keep in mind the moon is off. Okay, so the there's 4 days that separate the seasons. The moon is off hella days every year, six days per year. So if you add the 6 days, technically you're 10 days out every year, because if the moon's days don't align to the intercalary days, then you're 6 days plus the 4 days wrong. So that's 10 days every year. So every 5 years is actually 50 days. So every 10 years, there we go, is 100 days. You see what I'm saying? But that's only looking at it from that point of view. That's mitigating the circumstance of people adding days to the month or taking them away from the month or just losing track altogether of what the days were. Here we go. So in 8 years, she falls behind in the amount of 80 days. All 17 days she falls behind in 8 years are 80. All the 17 days she falls behind in 8 years are 80. So listen, she only actually does 17 days in 8 years equate to 80 days. Are you hearing that? She chooses to deviate her course 17 times, you know, and oh, okay, right on, bro. I can't knock you for for however you feel. Shit, can't nobody stop you. I know I can't. But just to really put a cap on that, this is Enoch being able to put a time on what he understands, what he knows. They came from a holy angel who's in charge of this. How off do you think men are? If you have, and this is my point, you have a group of people on earth, right on, who will tell you through because they're a paleontologist or whatever, right? They're freaking archaeologists, they're an ecologist, okay? They're a geologist, all right? They'll tell you that the earth is however old. But pimp, you're only 35, you're only 57, you're only 74. How do you really actually know how old the planet is unless you've been here that long? So the discrepancies just in the understanding of how old the earth is tells you that people don't understand the days, you know. So this is one of those things where folks sometimes will really overreach and overlook. And I tried not to get too complicated when I was explaining this to y'all. But it once again, to just make it basic, the moon only, for what Enoch says, every year falls behind 6 days. All right. But let's skip it past that. He's saying 8 years, right on, amounts to 21,832 days. Okay? People are like, how is that? And I'm like, so if every year is 360 days, let's just do the quick math. 3 times 7 is 3 times 8 is 24. So I'm thinking it's doing 13 years, which is what I think sounds closer to the actual math. Um, which is why it doesn't sound right now. Which is why I'm like, yeah, something's not right. Okay, so let's catch that. And that is something that I've seen before that I was like, something's not right. So 13 years is I'm pretty sure if you do the math real fast with me, 13 or 10 times 36, and then 3650. Give me 1 second. Let me just pull up my calculator. I'm tired of because I'm trying to read and think at the same time and do math. Too many things. Multitasking, as I have told you guys, is doing several things poorly at one time. Just don't do it. 64. See, okay, so look, this is crazy. I think it's right. I think it. I. I don't think it's tripping. Or maybe it means another number. Maybe it means 2000. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a typo. Does anybody else have a book of Enoch? This is one of those things where it's like I read it before and I rationalized it, and now it's like, and now that I'm looking at it again, I'm like, man, something's not right. So we're on chapter 74, verse 16, the very last one, or the very first 15, and it's the second to the last. And just read it because the 5 years and 1,770 days, which makes sense because it's 1820, which is all right. So that for the moon, 6 days in 8 years amounts to 21,832 days. I know it's not saying that in 6 years there's 21,832 days missed, unless it's accounting for the moon going back to different portals and reversing itself. But I'm sure that's not the case. I want to say it's the no, so it's not 13 years. That's right. So you guys are seeing me work this stuff out with myself because I'm reading it and I'm like, I'm sure I read it right the first time. So here we are. 5 years, 1,770 days. I'm not reading this wrong. I'm just gonna put it up so that way you guys can see it. 1 second, let me put up my thing. Chapter 74, verse 15. Let me try to get it close. So you see that 21,832, right? I'm not making that up. That's a number that's right there, and I'm trying to rationalize it like I did before. But before I knew it wasn't the moon being out of context of 21,832 days. It's the math and the numbers of all this stuff. How many days are there altogether? 21,000 days. It's like 15 years or like 20. It's like 20 years or something like that. It's a crazy number. So that's not the number I'm looking for. How did I rationalize this before? Oh my goodness. Right. No, right. I'm not tripping. But the whole point and the whole purpose is that the moon itself takes people out of context. Like you're going to be so many days off if you're dealing with the moon. You follow what I'm saying? Now let's just skip forward real quick, and then I'll come right back to that. Chapter 75. And the leaders of the heads of thousands who were placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary days. Listen, and the leaders of the heads of thousands who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary days, being inseparable from them office according to the reckoning of the year. And these render service on the 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them, men go wrong therein. For those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heaven, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth. And the exactness of the year is accomplished through its separate 364 stations. Stop right there. Let's go back to the 21,832 days. How I first had reckoned this, like almost a month ago, and it's been a long time since I read this, but I had added together the years, thinking that was right, but that's only like a third of that time. It's really like a quarter of the time, so that's not right. Um, that's like fuck. Oh my goodness. 21,000 is 1 second. 21, 8, 3, 2 divided. Whoa. I got to divide this real quick and see exactly. I want to say it's like it's almost a person's life. Uh, it could be like 50 or 60 years. Something crazy. Divide. There we go. Haven't even looked into the numbers. Yeah, 59.81. So 60 years almost. We'll just say 60 years. So listen, listen. I can't be positive. Let's just say though, they meant no, because 3 years you'd have to have at least 900 days. And that would be 2,600. So no, you're six. Listen, this is what I'm saying. This is why it's so incredible. You're hella years off. So there's six. So you're 60 years back or forward or off. Period. In 8 years, fucking with the moon. That's crazy. This is why this is so important. And I didn't do the math the first time I did it around. I think I did the rough math, and I didn't get nearly that high in the number, so I was wrong with my math before. But regardless of that, um, the more important thing is that I was trying to tell you that the moon messes people up as far as the days of the year are concerned. Why she does this is because she goes back into portals that she just came out of. So technically, she's behind by 6 days. But this is why I was trying to say that those days are like months, years. That it's way longer than you think it is. The only way I could make this make sense is if you're at work and something happens that puts you 20 minutes behind, and then you end up being 2 hours behind. And so now you have to do a project that you should have finished today. It's going to take you the next 2 days to finish. That type of shit. So it's a small thing. It looks really super duper tiny. Now, minus the fact that we're in so-called 2019 and this was written 12,000 years ago, so-called. Some people think 20,000 years ago. Some people think as little as 6,000, 7,000 years ago. Are you hearing me? Are you following me? Some people believe as little as 6,000 years ago, less than 7,000 years ago. So we're that far displaced. So how many years off are we? And if the moon will take you that many years off, imagine if the moon is putting you 60 years into the future every 8 years and not taking you back. Hear me? If the moon is putting you 60 years into the future, this is way back then. How would you how would you know? How would you know? Now, there would be some stupid people who were like, that means that no one of them didn't live that long. No, that's not what that means. Because the people who wrote the scripture, the way that the scripture is not written from that sort of understanding. What it actually means is that no one of them could have actually been much, much, much older than what we understand. Ah, and the earth could be much, 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 much older than what we understand. Or everything as it's written is as it is. And this is what it is. The moon can deviate people's understanding by years. So if you're years displaced from a certain timeline in a certain period, and you're trying to trace how many moons ago this was, and you're going based on your understanding of the moon, and you count back from the cycle that you're on to that many cycles ago, every 8 years you count, you could be 60 years off in the cycles of the moon. Understand this: you can't be 60 years off in the cycle of the sun, but you could be 60 years totally different. That's how it's written, 50, 59.8. Now, why I have an issue with that, and why I had an issue with that when I first read it, is because I was like, where did it get 1,770 days from to 21,832? But I just accept it. I don't argue with it. I just be like, whatever, it is what it is. But that's one of those things. And I'm glad that it stumbled me the same way it stumbled me when I first. I'm trying to tell y'all, when I first read this part, it literally took me 2 weeks to understand what the hell was going on. Like 2 weeks, you know. So I'm glad that it caught me like that again, because I was like, man, something's not right about what I'm saying right now. And I'm trying to explain it, and I keep trying to explain it, and it's not sounding right, and it's not sounding right. Because for certain parts, I know exactly what I want to say. And for this part, that's how I wanted to stress the fact that men already get wrong. There's 4 days in the year that I explained to you as I read the sun's orbiting of the stations. There's 4 days in the year that actually separate the seasons. So if this is winter, this is summer, this is spring, and this is fall, those 4 days don't get properly accounted for in the year. So people actually have the seasons wrong. So therefore, they have the counting of the days in the month wrong. If that's one thing you have wrong, then you have to account for the fact that people have the moon wrong. Oh my goodness. They're hella off. They're so far off, which is why you guys have heard me joke around for years. Like the Sabbath, I think, is on Tuesday. I say that, but there's a part of me that really believes like it's an abstract day of the week, like a Tuesday. Right on. We have to remember that Monday or Moon's Day and Saturday or Saturn's Day and Sunday or the Sun's Day are all things that they use to worship the luminaries that they know about. So when we break it all down, and I just love this whole little growing process, because now I get to go back to what I was talking about. Let's read this real quick. Verse 16 of chapter 74. And the year is accurately completed in conformity with their world stations and the stations of the sun, which rise from the portals through which it rises and sets 30 days. Stop right there. So if there's one portal, the portal has multiple windows on each side. So there's 364 stations for the sun. The sun has, this is why this is important, the sun has a perfect pattern it follows every single year, and it touches each and every one of these stations. Okay, see, but here's the thing though. We're going to read about it in a few pages, maybe we might get to it today, maybe not. It talks about there's certain months that only have 29 days, 28 days. So even when we read about that, we still have to like consider like there's so much that we just don't know, right? This is why the intercalary days are so important. Because if there's days with 29 months, or if there's months with 29 days, that means that the sun rising and setting in them might be the sun going for one more day in this portal, right? And then the new season coming within in the same portal, but it's a whole nother month. But we're not looking at it as that 31st day is actually day one to a new month, right on, or the ending of a specific cycle, if that makes sense. Um, the reason why I said that is because you're absolutely right. For you to have a calendar that has 30, 31, 28, 29 days, right? You can't. So for example, um leap year is what, is it next year? So leap year is next year, so you'll have 29 days in February, which by regular happenstance might only actually have 28 days, because the book of Enoch explains that there's a month that has 28 days, and I want to say that there's a couple months that have 29 days. So some of these months, two of these months that we can think of right now, follow me though, we don't know which days. I assume the 4 days that are brought up where the sun is in a specific portal is is um is one of the days of intercalary breakup. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that I know the exact day of the exact month that it actually does that in. You follow what I'm saying? Because I would have to know what the first month is, the true first month is, and then the true first day. I would have to know every single day from the beginning till now. So even knowing what you just said is true, because it tells us that there's 31 days in specific months, and it tells us when the sun changes these stations specifically. I mean, you get what I'm saying? There's only so many days between. There's like 90 days or something like that between each change. We go back and look at it, I'm pretty sure it's something like that. Um, and I'll just read one of them that has the 31 days. The last part. And the sun rises on that day from the second portal, and sets in the west portal, and sets in the west second portal, and returns to the east into the first portal for 1 and 30 mornings, and sets in the first portal in the west of the heaven. So when it says that right there, this is, I want to say that's coming into the 10th month, if I'm not mistaken. So coming into the 10th month, or coming out of the ninth month, however you want to look at it, the sun is going to have a 31-day period in one of these portals. Now that 31-day period, I can't discern, sister, what I'm trying to say to you. I can't discern if the first day of the 31 is the intercalary day, or what day is the actual intercalary day. I don't know if it's the first, last day, or the second. Like, I don't know what day actually it changes. You know what I mean? There's no distinction. It doesn't really tell us. So I just assume that the months that have 31 days naturally are the months that we can look at. Not now, because they're back to back. So nowadays it's December, January, July, August. But we know, based on reading what Enoch says, those days are separated by 90 days. So the 31-day months that we have are not in correspondence to the 31-day stations of the sun, if that makes sense. The sun is correspondent to stations, not months like we are, because it goes to one station, to the next station, to the next station, if you're following me. But I'll keep it pushing, and I'm going to read something, and then I'm going to get ready to shut it down because it's 5:51. Did I go back? Did I go back on this? No, I'm in the right spot. Give me one moment. It's chapter 75. So now that we've gone over a whole bunch of that, and we'll have to go over it all again. I'll have to what I'll probably do is I'll have to go get a whole bunch of pictures off the internet of certain days of the month, put together a little collage, a little folder with just those pictures, and we'll just go the round robin. We're looking at the pictures of certain days. Um, we'll even look up and pull up, months with the longest days, months with the shortest days, months where sunlight and day, and months where daytime and nighttime are equal, and just to really gather the fullness of it. But I have to read this stuff to you first before I bring that kind of information forth, um, because then it gives you a better handle on it. And then I'm going to look into the science of to called look at this. It's pretty much where one event may be small or seemingly insignificant, but over a period of time, it's amplified and becomes very important, maybe even a detriment to you. I just can't think of the name of it, but it's like it's not exactly a science, but it's almost like a science. I just can't think of the name of it right now. And we're just going to break it all down to where how if people don't have the days right and they don't have the months right and the seasons, hear me, come on now, I'm about to break it down to you, and the seasons aren't right because of such. The seasons don't change, but the months that we're saying that they take place in are not right. If winter's not the first technically it's the first setting. Winter's the first setting, which is why I get why they did what I understand why they did what they did. I just don't agree. You know what I mean? At this point in my life, I totally see how it's wrong. Like, and it throws everybody's understanding off because the world started off with water around it and it was dark. So that means that it was cold. So the natural pedigree for, I guess, a person who is trying to be technical would be to say that the first months of the earth, of its creation, its conception, were cold and wintry. There's nothing wrong with that. But the actual first months that life begins to thrive and begins to live on earth are in the months of what you would call late summer, early fall. So, or autumn, whatever people want to say, right? Um, that is unchangeable, it's irrefutable. And because of such, it's something that a lot of people should look at differently. Most folks will try to take a situation and say, like, I'm going to read it to you, chapter 75. And the leaders of the heads of thousands who were placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the four intercalary days, being inseparable from their office according to the reckoning of the year. And these render service on the 4 days, which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them, men go wrong therein. For those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heaven, one in the fourth portal, one in the sixth portal. And the exactness of the year is accomplished throughout the separate 364 stations. For the signs and the times and the years and the days the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory have set forever over all the luminaries of heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, i.e., the sun, moon, and the stars, and all the ministering creatures. What? and all the ministering creatures which make their revolution, and all the chariots of heaven. Stop right there. So if I wanted to explain UFOs to you, I just explained them. Now, I'm going to go back to what I was getting at initially, which is the days having people all the way off. The days throw people so off because, as he's saying right now, the portals people don't account for. The moon does not go through all the same portals that the sun has assigned to it. The moon goes on its own program. With that said, because there's perfection with the sun and the other luminaries, as we're reading, the understanding of men, what things are, what they're supposed to be, what they're meant to be, is awry and it's wrong. So maybe what we've been calling demons and devils are not demons and devils. Because what does it say right here? And Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory has set forever over all the luminaries of the heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, moon, and stars, what? And all the ministering creatures which make their revolution, and all the chariots of the heaven. Come on, man. Stop playing with me. In like manner, 12 doors Uriel showed to me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in the heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth. From them warmth diffused over the earth, when they are open at their appointed seasons, and for the winds and the spirit of dew when they are open, standing in the heavens at the ends. As for the 12 portals in the heavens at the ends of the earth, out of which go forth the sun, moon, and the stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and the west. There are many windows open to the left and the right of them, and one window at its seasons produces warmth, corresponding to those doors from which the stars come forth according as he has commanded them, and wherein they set corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven. What? And I saw chariots in the heaven, running in the world above these portals, in which revolve the stars that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it makes its course through the entire world. Now, stop right there. We're going to go back and we're going to read this little part real quick about the ministering creatures, right on, which make their revolution and all the chariots of the heaven. And these are the host of heaven, okay? These are the things that have come down, that have influenced mankind throughout the ages, for better and for worse. These aren't the fallen. Nay, these are other creatures, the ministering creatures, as I just said. This is why the Messiah, the anointed one, the elect one, has to judge the works, once again, of the angels in the heavens. Because if you are a ministering creature who can be seen on the earth, seen throughout the earth, for the times of the earth, then that means that you can influence how people think, what they understand, how they feel, what they praise and worship. And if you are a detriment to the salvation of a soul and not the betterment to it, then you should be held accountable to the fullest regard. That is just my opinion as a man. It has nothing to do with the heavens at all, or the divine. Because if I go to the heavens and I corrupt and taint the heavens, or attempted to, the idea of trying to, I'm sure would get you crushed out of existence. But if one were to be able to go and to do so successfully, I am sure that the consequence that is going to follow is not one that is well pleasing to you. Nor is the term mercy to be considered when you say things like, I didn't mean to, that wasn't my intent, because no one cares. This goes back to that saying that the white man has stolen from the Most High. Ignorance is not an excuse in the eyes of the law. In the eyes of judgment, sin is sin. Doesn't matter who committed it. Doesn't matter why they committed it. You done it, you done it, you done it. That's one of those things. These ministering creatures have had their effect on mankind. Now, did it go into saying that to us? No. But if I wanted to know what those are, I would just have to say that these are maybe the aliens, and the UFOs, and all the other things that people say are make-believe. It is rumored that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, that guy, is actually an interdimensional being, which is why they never find it. Him, her, whatever it is. And the reason why this is so important is because if that was a creature that was in its own chariot or had a chariot to ride in, what would it be ministering to the people? That there's more out there than you know, that the creations of the Most High have no bounds and are limitless, that we don't know everything. Once again, it hasn't brought you closer to the Most High, so its true effect on people, and once again, it has been idly worshipped as well. These are things that people will sometimes let go and let be. Just to throw it out there, caveat. Waiting for this other job to call me back, so I stopped working at this last little place. I'm gonna try to get this white heaven kicked out this week and a few other little videos. I got a lot of time on my hands, but at least for the next 3 or 4 days. Hopefully for the next 3 or 4 days. Got a lot of time on my hands. I'm gonna try to get some stuff done. But back to this. Uriel, the angel that is showing all these things to Enoch. Mind the fact that Uriel is showing this man all these things. You have to understand that he's in command of these things. So Uriel himself has never deviated from the Most High. You understand that? In order for the course of the sun to never deviate, in order for Uriel to never try to make the moon be something that she is not, or that she does not want to be, he simply goes with the. It's pretty much like trying to conduct a team full of superstars. You understand? You know, stars, literally, but these guys are all superstars in their mind, and the sun being the 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 most grandiose of them. Now, I didn't say that the sun had the greatest of the egos, but the sun is the most grandiose of all the luminaries, and then the moon after it in greatness. So when we've been told that this, once again, the sun is so many times larger than the earth and so many times larger than the moon, uh, 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 it's unbelievable. You know, it's unbelievable. What the book of Enoch is doing is that it's humanizing, and it's giving a much more clear understanding and a much more believable reference to the things that we already know and see every day to be true. You would be hard pressed to tell me that you've never, sister, you already said you certain days you see the moon in the sky with the sun. You know, you already said it. So for a person to try to say that they've never seen these things, you know, I know there's at least one person here who has. You know, me and brother Andre talk about this stuff all the time. So that's two people. You know, um, I mean, so it's, and then plus myself, I observe these things regularly. You know, I make it a point sometimes when I'm just walking around, and I'll see the sun and the moon out, and I'll see complete strangers, mainly white people, and I'll say, "Hey, did you know that that's the moon right there? That's not Mars. That's the moon." And they'll be like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the moon." Well, did you know it's the same size as the sun? I just break it down to them real quick. They say not to give your pearls into the wine and the dogs. I mean, to the swine and the dogs, lest they trample them. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter. It's not going to change. It's not going to change how I feel about anything because I don't give them enough time to really respond most of the time. I just let them know and keep it pushing. You know, I tell people all the time that Noah's sons are triplets. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to make them go and repent because they're starting to think like, well, what does he mean by triplets? Right. It means that they all look the same. Damn it. But anyway, we're we're at a junction where we've read we've read um, a whole lot. We actually have. Like I said, I could have ran through this and just read a whole bunch, but that's BS. That's bull. You know, and I really want this to really sink in better and better. So tomorrow, for sure, I'll probably end up doing two things. I'm going to try to put together the information tonight and put it in video format for my little weekly update. But then again, I might just do a live stream, a little quick little one tomorrow, and then like do one of those early in the day. Don't really need nobody to come watch that one, but then mess with me for real on the review of this because I want to tie some scripture in like I couldn't do today. There's just so much going on in the book of Enoch, and I like to talk because I'm long-winded. Uh, but really, I like to elaborate because a lot of the things sometimes uh, uh, a lot of the things sometimes are overlooked and they're underappreciated, and like it, it can really be frustrating. Um, like I'm gonna start in chapter 76, and then we'll probably end there. At the ends of the earth, I saw 12 portals open to all the quarters, from which the wind goes forth and blow over the earth. Listen to this. Three of them open on the east of the heavens, three of them in the west, three of them to the right or the south of the heaven, and three of them on the left or the north of the heaven. The first three are those of the east, and three of the north, and the three after those of the south, and the three of the west. Through four of these winds come blessing and prosperity, and from those eight come hurtful, and from those eight come hurtful winds. When they are sent, they bring destruction on all the earth, and on the water upon it, and on all who dwell thereon, and on everything which is in the water and on the land. And the first wind from these portals, called the east wind, comes forth through the first portal, which is in the east, inclining towards the south. From it comes forth desolation, drought, heat, and destruction. And through the second portal in the middle comes what is fitting. From it comes rain and fruitfulness and prosperity and dew. And through the third portal, which lies the north, come cold and drought. And after these, from the south winds, through these three portals, through the first portals of them inclining to the east, uh, excuse me, through the first portals of them inclining to the east, comes forth a hot wind. And through the middle portal, next to it, there comes forth fragrant smells, and dew, and rain, and prosperity, and health. And through the third portal, lying to the west, comes forth dew, and rain, and locust, and desolation. After these, the north winds from the seventh portal in the east come dew, and rain, and locust, and desolation. And from the middle portal in the direction in the direct direction, health and rain and dew and prosperity. And in the third portal, in the west, comes cloud and hoarfrost and snow and rain and dew and locust. And after these four are the west winds through the first portal, adjoining the north, come forth dew and hoarfrost, cold and snow and frost. From the middle portal come forth dew and rain and prosperity and blessing. And the last portal which adjoins south comes forth drought and desolation and burning and destruction. And the 12 portals of the four quarters of heaven are therewith completed, and all their laws, and all their plagues, and all their benefactions have I shown to thee, my son Methuselah. Now stop right there. Uh, the winds of heaven and all these things. If I told you guys that HARP was a machine that tried to manipulate the winds, tried to manipulate the spirits that control specific forces, i.e., the hoarfrost, i.e., the snow, right on? Can you dig it? I.e., the dew. If I told you that HARP was a machine and that CERN also in itself, you know what I mean, is another machine meant to attempt to manipulate forces beyond their control. But HARP itself, which is a magnetic mechanism that allows for frequencies to be gathered and dispersed, and a desire wherein which so much so that it can create certain weather patterns and conditions. If I'm not mistaken, they are conjuring the actual energy forces that it takes to induce the rains of blessing, right on, or the rains and the winds of destruction, okay, and the plagues. Can you dig it? And the locust. It's deep. So this is why understanding what these things do, what they're meant to do. We'll go over the exact direction again, not right this moment, but we'll go over it. And the reason why this is so important is because people will sometimes say to themselves, like, oh, they just thought this stuff up. No, they didn't. They did not just think up HARP. Okay. They didn't just think that up. HAARP. They didn't just think that up. Okay. All right. High altitude something. I don't even give a damn to remember what it means right now. But really, they're messing with the magnetics. They're dealing in spectra. They're dealing in spectra. And only the Most High could allow for them to mess with, because that's not messing with the laws of anything. They can't change the sun coming up or going down. They can't change any of that. I'm sure that's one of their aims. Psalms 2, why did the heathen rage? Why did the heathen rage? Is in conjunction with the book of Enoch probably the entire time. Because every time you read about something that you know that people are messing with right now, the food they're messing with, the animals they're messing with everything. It tells you that what they're imagining in their vanity, a part of it is men being able to have babies, right on, and get pregnant, and women being able to produce the spermicide to get a man pregnant, like that kind of stuff. Like they're trying to go against the natural order of everything, you see, and dirty up all of the creation of the Most High, more so than it's ever been before. Not that it's already not corrupted, right on. Not that it's not already diluted, all right. But they figure we can one up a little more. We can get it just a little bit worse than what it is. Maybe a lot worse if they have the time. But I'm gonna end on chapter 77. I don't want y'all to hear this. And the first quarter is called the east because it is first. And the second, the south, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there is there in quite a special sense will he who was blessed forever descend. They know he's coming. Enoch will tell us again, or I think he already told us before, but if he hasn't, he'll tell us again that the Most High is going to come. The Most High God is coming. Man, I can't even tell people what that does to me. Like, that gives me real hope. You know, I'm done reading for the day. On that note, I'm going to end on a high note. You know, that's the highest note that there is to me. You know, this wasn't spoken by a man. That wasn't a man who told you that. Remember that, y'all. Please remember that our great patriarch Enoch was not a man when he gave these directions. He was more than a man. He was greater than a man could ever wish to be, hope to be. There is going to be no hope nor mercy for those who do not repent. Everything that I do is really in a sense to get people to understand what it is that we're up against. Now, all the ministering creatures of heaven and all the chariots of the heaven, those unidentified flying objects, right? What if I told you that some of those guys are able to manipulate the wind themselves? What if I told you that it's because they understand how to fly through one portal of the heaven to another portal of the heaven? It seems as if they've disappeared, but all they've done is gone from one end of the, they've just gone from one place to the next. Which, in all, for what it's worth, would be different dimensions. Mm. What if these same ministering creatures have the ability to go from the heaven of heavens to just the regular heavens, or to the heavens to the heaven of heavens, right? And to earth. Once again, who are we to dictate something like that? Come on. There is way too much going on in this one little book. I'm stumped right now, but I'm not as stumped. I'll let you guys know exactly where I'm at. There's a happening where people always assume that it was Noah, and it's not Noah. It's more than Noah. It's like it's really the establishing of the first bloodline of people, or those who go astray, to those who have not gone astray from the Most High in a sense. And then, even though I love Eve to death, love her to death, she went astray first and was able to convince one Adam or Ish to go astray with her. And by this, I'm just speaking to the level and the fact that Adam never came into perfection, and neither did Eve, for the sake and the reasoning that she was led astray by the serpent. Now, the reason why this is so important is because when we get to reading this part later, we're going to read about these stars that fall, whose privy members are as horses. And see, for a long time, I used to always wonder where like certain stuff come from. But the whole concept of people saying that they're as endowed as a horse actually comes from the book of Enoch in scripture. This is why there's so many references to that. But the reference is to really show you that that person may have genetics that are not earthly. You understand? Because it's only pointed out with the stars, which I thought was weird that it points out that the stars that fell had members that were as horses, but these bulls that you're talking about, you understand what I'm talking about? Like it's such an awkward conundrum. It's such an awkward, freaking scenario. And then the way that it's written, you almost, if you read it literally, you'll get the idea that that even Cain had children or something like that. Like if you read into it too literally, and so it's taken a lot of this last week and a half, almost 2 weeks of reading it and just really looking at it and stepping back and really just asking the Most High, like, okay, what is this really trying to say right now? Like, what is it trying to tell me? And then there's this Red Bull who gets killed initially. Now it's symbolic of two things. Number one is symbolic of bloodshed on the earth, and then it's also symbolic of the death of Abel. And then the removal of the character or the resemblance of one who we know as Japheth. Now, this same Red Bull is brought to is brought to pass later in the same parable, the same dream vision. The reason why I'm giving this to you now is so that way you understand where I'm at. So as things change or as my mind formulates better with it, I'll go with that. However, when it speaks on the white bull that lives into the ark, who lives in the boat, it speaks on that there's a white bull, a black bull, and a red bull that are all with him that get off the boat with him. So even when you read this concept and this bull who is speaking on, and at the end of his life becomes a man, speaking on Noah. Now, why this is so important is because before this takes place, there's a happening where it explains that the children of men, or that these other animals that are spawned from the stars of heaven, laying with these oxen. See, I can't break it all down right now in one hit, but it pretty much says that the children of men were surrounded by these foreign animals that they had never seen before. And why this is so important is because it brings up the term children of men in particularly. Why that is so highly important. One must really recognize and appreciate that to distinguish from the children of men, to calling who are actually human beings animals, right? Is an epic thing. One moment. Getting old. Alarm going off. But anyway, uh, the children of men are not these same people that are being made into comparison of sheep or oxen or bulls, right on, or heifers or cows. They're not the same concept. They're not the same. They're totally different. So when I read it, even still, then um, there's like a part of me that's like, are the children of men being isolated so that way we can still understand that, what's the word I'm looking for? Because it's, let me just jump to it real quick, and then and then I'm actually done for the day. Okay. Okay, so here we are. It says, and this is in number 86. And again, with my eyes as I slept, I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and eat and pastured amongst those oxen. And after that, I saw the large and the black oxen, and behold, they all changed their stalls and their pastures and their cattle, and began to live with each other. And again I saw in the vision and looked towards the heaven. And behold, I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star. And they became bulls amongst those cattle, and pastured with them amongst them. And I looked at them and saw, and behold, they let out their privy members like horses, and began to cover the cows of the oxen, and they all became pregnant and bare elephants, camels, and asses. And all the oxen feared them and were frightened at them, and began to bite with their teeth, and to devour, and to gore with their horns. And they began, moreover, to devour those oxen. And behold, all the children of the earth began to tremble and quake before them, and to flee from them. Stop right there. Now, I read all that to read that last part. For it to say all the children of the earth, unless it's talking about everything alive and living on the earth, and it doesn't mean the children of men. See, this is why it's so epic. But the children of the earth and concept is everybody. So where are the human beings at? You follow me in this whole analogy, this whole premise. And the reason why that's so important is because children, when I think of children, I think of human beings. So if the children of the earth fled from them, right, it's a distinction from the oxen. Because why not say, and the oxen began to tremble and quake before them and flee from them? But it carries on to say in chapter 87, and again I saw how they began to gore each other and to devour each other. And the earth began to cry aloud. And I raised mine eyes to heaven and saw in a vision. And behold, there came forth from heaven beings, listen, beings who were like white men. And four went forth from that place, and three went with them. And those three had last come forth, grasped me by my hand, and took me up away from the generations of the earth, and raised me up to a lofty place, and showed me a tower raised high above the earth, and all the hills were lowered. And one said unto me, remain here till thou seest everything that befalls those elephants, camels, and asses, and the stars, and the oxen, and all of them. Now we're not going to get too carried away on that because I can't I can't let you I listen, I can't wait to discredit clone factory claims and things of like nature. It's coming. Coming soon to a live stream near you. It's coming. Don't worry. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. So 6:30. Been at it now for a little bit. We're gonna get ready to call it an end. Are there any questions from anyone about anything at all? And I'll wait 20, 30 seconds because I know the relay is kind of bad. Nope. Still waiting. No questions? No comments or concerns? Okay. All right. Well, I'm always glad that there's no questions or not. I mean, I don't know how to take it, but uh, you think anything I can add to this? Okay, this is what I want everybody to do. It's kind of late certain places. Tomorrow when you get up, whether it's sunny, rainy, whatever. Okay, but when you guys get up and you get to moving, pay keen attention to what the sun looks like tonight as the sun goes down. Watch for the moon. See where she's at in her fullness or her fulfillment of her time. Uh, um, 21,832 days, y'all. Reverse or forward or whatever. In 8 years, a person can perceive there has been many more years than there actually has been. What up, bro? What's happening? Okay, so tonight, tonight if the moon shines through the clouds, just look for the fullness thereof. Just actually observe it and see what it looks like. That's what that's pretty much what I'm challenging everybody to do is to see what you see tonight. Uh, it's not a full moon in Las Vegas and a half moon in California. That's not how it works. So it's just so we can start to try to see and maybe catch the next cycle. We'll never know what portal is coming in and out of because we'd have to figure out what portal the sun's coming. We'd have to know we would have to figure out what month we're actually in now, like how many parts of the day there are, how many nights of the day there are, right? Like we would have to time the light and then time the darkness and see how many hours there is for darkness to light, divide both of those times into the regular day, and then divide that time by the 18 to understand how many parts of light and how many parts of darkness there are. But there's a lot going on. So we're just going to worry about just seeing where the moon potentially could be at, potentially is at right now, in its phases, and just try to pay attention. I think that's more than an important thing to do. I think it's a stalwart thing to do. And it makes us not lazy, and it also gives us a better understanding of where we're at right now. If it's really not the fifth month and it's really the second month of the year, or the first month of the year, or the 12th month right on, and it's actually half and half, you know. Hey, that's funny. That's epic. That's epic. But you know what's funny though, bro? I've always felt like that about Tuesday. I don't know why. Tuesday, Tuesday, you know, that's more than interesting. If you could ever find where you, if you ever find out where you found that information, bro, please let me know, man, so I can put Sabato, you feel me, aka Saturday, aka Saturn's Day, into the dirt. Take your time, Martin. It could take you fucking 2 or 3 months to find that shit. Just take your time, bro. No rush. You know, no rush, man. But just the fact that you even brought that up, like, I mean, that's one of those things where I can't believe my own hype. You know what I mean? I can't believe my own hype, but I will say that I've been saying that for a long. I've been saying that for a long time, and and it just corresponds with if listen, if people have the days of the month wrong and the days of the years wrong, there's no way that the days of the week are right. Come on. The book of Enoch says that there's 18 parts of the day, yet we live by 24 hours. And you can go back and listen to particular videos. I literally pick on Tuesday all the time. I might say, yeah, it could be Wednesday or another day, but I've said for a long time Tuesday, that in particular day. And the reason being is because it's after Monday or Moon's Day. And the moon is the exact instrument that has everybody thrown off. But before I knew that the moon had them thrown off, I know that the moon worship on this planet is probably just as great or greater than sun worship. No joke. No joke. I would say that there's more moon worshipers than sun worshipers. The reason why is because you can actually look at the moon. Did you hear me? The reason why is because you can actually look at the moon, right, and appreciate her beauty. It's deep like that. It's bigger than just uh uh people crawling out of the middle of earth and they seen the sun first or they seen the moon first. It's, I mean, that is a huge, that probably pays like 75, 80% of it. But the other part I would have to just assume is just you can look at the moon ways you can't look at the sun. Right. I don't think people even understand. Like, I put such a basic way of looking at it on things, and sometimes it's unappreciated. I think sometimes people just overlook it as if it's really not that big of a deal. But it's like, no, what I'm saying right now is huge. You know, who's gonna go out there and just stare at the sun? Right. But who's gonna go out there and stare at the moon? Right. Exactly. So Monday, aka Moon's Day, is the last day until there is a day of the week until Sunday again. You know what I mean? Until Sunday, there isn't another day that I could think of that I could change, right? Into a luminary with known fact. Saturn's day, Sun's is there we go. Saturn, there we go. So Saturn's day, Sunday, and Moon's day, those 3 days are all pagan days that they designated for their worship of the luminaries. But Tuesday always just seemed appropriate. I was like, if the seventh day of the week was any day of the week, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. And I know that this sounds corny. I know it sounds stupid to say that, but that's the truth. Um, the God of everything is he really is working with me, y'all. If y'all work with me and stay patient, man, we're gonna have a blast this summer. Um, this weekly update I got coming for you guys, epic. The white heaven, tragic mulatto, that's coming. That's on the works. I really think I want to do a video first and then do a live stream. You know, uh, I'm venting all this because I'm about to be done. The weekly update is going to be epic. We're going to talk more about China and the Middle East, a little bit about the wall, but really about China and the Middle East. And I want to talk a lot about Africa because I want to talk about how, as the situation over there continues to destabilize, it's only a matter of time until the U.S. and China bump heads over a matter of interest, you know, and the trade war will be a small part of the things that allow for the situation to potentially, which I do see escalating, but potentially escalating into something that you can't actually just step away from. Um, my dad has been saying to me, he's like, son, Trump is trying to start a conflict with anybody so that way he can stay in office. And the more I look at it, the more realistic something like that does seem, because if a conflict were to start and he wasn't seen as the agitator, you couldn't really say, oh, well, man, we just need to get rid of Trump. You can say, well, really, he was trying to do his best, and this unfortunate circumstance happened to manifest, which I wouldn't see it like that, but that's how it would probably be presented to us. Uh, the tragic mulatto. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, the tragic mulatto, it does not come from the loins of a white man, but from the loins of a black man. The tragic mulatto will always be the person who's trying to prove that they're black enough. Never somebody who wants to be white. You can't be a tragic mulatto if you want to be a white person. You're only a tragic mulatto when you want to be a nigga. And I'm gonna explain it to you like this. There were so many half breeds, quarter breeds, eighth breeds, people who found their way around society by dumping on black people. Hell, there's been a lot of black people to find their way around society by dumping on black people. So for somebody to tell me that the tragic mulatto is just simply somebody who dumps on black people or uses black people, that's bullshit. A really good example of a tragic mulatto is a guy like Drake, right on. You know what I mean? Is a dude like Chris Brown, uh, where as opposed to them being able to maintain their own persona as the person that they think they know they are. I want y'all to understand. This dude Chris Brown is an R&B singer. Okay, all right. The fact that he does the shit that he does out there in California is ridiculous. The only mixed breed dude who I think, and he's still not your representative, could never represent you. The only one who kind of has his head on half-ass right is old boy J. Cole. You know what I mean? Because he knows he can't represent you. He understands that. That's why when he did that song, "Get Off My Dick," the video, he plays a house nigga, okay, who brings guns to the field niggas, right? And in the video, there's a part where he's trying to talk to the black chicks, but the black chicks pay him no never mind because they want the field niggas, right? So when you pay attention to what he's trying to lay out to you, he's like, I would be at black chicks, but I'm not black enough for them. To them, I'm not really a nigga because the moment I say my mom is white, I mean, imagine you're J. Cole or anybody whose mom's not black and your dad is black, and a chick gets to going in on white women or Asian women or whatever women. You see what I'm saying? You know? So when you start to look at the different situations that people are presented with, normally they're sensitive because you're talking about them as well. Because J. Cole's not just black, he's also white. So there's going to be sensitivity towards white people in his genealogy. He's going to have to, on some level, say that because he can't just be all out hostile towards them. Black people aren't even all out hostile towards white people. So for a dude who's half white to show way more animosity towards what you could call his own people than black people is pathetic. You know what I'm saying? But there's a lot of mixed people who are like that. But those aren't tragic mulattoes to white people. You follow what I'm saying? A mixed dude who hates white people is not tragic. A mixed dude who wants to be a nigga is tragic. That's what's tragic. And I'm gonna break it down to y'all so vicious to where you really understand that one of the reasons why they really had to have the Civil War was not just because these mulattoes were gaining power, but because the mulattoes wanted to be black. It would have been different if mulattoes weren't trying to get power for black people, but they were. You feel me? If they had just let it go, once again, yo, I can't wait to do it all up for you. I just have so much going on. Keep praying for your boy. You know, we're being bopping them from a distance. I want y'all to know that you guys are sharing my victories with me. Every time I go to court and I leave, it's a victory. Every time I go to court and their jaws drop, it's a victory. Okay? The fact that they don't want to capitulate to the fact that I've done nothing wrong, and they can't even agree to the fact that I've done nothing wrong, even though that there is nothing that substantiates that any wrongdoing took place, is just fine by me because I know for a fact that the Most High God will not let this go unvindicated. He will vindicate me in the end, okay? And I shall be exonerated. Outside of that, my brothers and my sisters, the luminaries, understand that the sun and the moon are the same size. The sun is 7 times brighter than that of the moon. The moon is on her own course, does what she likes, falls behind 6 days every year. But every 8 years, what would normally be just a couple thousand days, okay, right on, is 21,000 days. And unless that's just a major typo, I want y'all to understand, they've been putting this book out for a long time, all right, for a long time. If that was a typo that was wrong, they would have fixed that a long time ago. It means 21,832 days. So the moon can have you 60 years in the wrong direction, and you could be 60 years forward or back, depending on who the person is, depending on what the time is and what the events are. You see how deep it is now? However, get ready for this next part. Get ready, get ready, get ready. I can't stress it enough. And stay ready. Brothers and sisters, I salute you. There are no people like you guys on earth right now. Our small unit cohesion is reverberated throughout the entire ranks of the YouTube world, believe it or not, especially the black YouTubers. They watch this and they're trying to understand, how do I maintain small unit cohesion? Because it's not about, because they can get much larger groups than I can, but there's people within their groups who can't stand each other and hate each other. I love y'all back. And as always, like always, been an honor. And until next time, and I salute you for the final time tonight. Good night.